Today I thought I'd answer one of your questions in the comments like I often do, so keep them coming. And that is, what's the better seat between the GT Omega RS6, which is the one I'm sat in, and the GT Omega RS9, which is the one to my left here. So I'll tell you what I think of them, and I've got the tape measure in hand. So I'll measure some dimensions, the internal dimensions, the bit where we actually sit. Because some people have said that they find the RS9 a little bit restrictive around the shoulders. And also I'll sit in both of them so you can see sort of what they look like sat around me, with like sort of average size person. And Ori's come to join us as well. I don't know if you can see her, but she may well hop into a seat as well, as she likes to. So first things first, the build quality of these seats is identical. I would even go as far as to say they're made in exactly the same factory. The fittings, the fixtures, everything all looks identical. The little covers and the plastic, it all looks exactly the same. So I'm going to say they're from the same place. Build quality is absolutely fine. My RS6 that was on my GT Omega Art cockpit, I had for about 3 years, and it's had a motion platform attached to it, so it's been thrown around. There wasn't a rip or a tear or even really a wrinkle in any of the vinyl that it's made of. So I would say they're pretty decent for what you pay, and that they do last. Comfort wise, I would say they're both just as comfortable as each other for my size and shape. Obviously, if you're a bigger guy, maybe you'll find one more comfortable than the other. And if you're a much smaller guy, perhaps you'll find one more comfortable than the other. But for me, I have no issue sitting in either the RS6 or the RS9 for a good couple of hours at a time, you know, playing some dirt rally. No issues whatsoever. I don't get any aches or pains or anything. I don't feel like I'm being restricted in either seat, both at the, you know, shoulder width ways or, you know, either side of my legs where the bolsters are. So for me at least, I couldn't recommend one over the other as far as comfort goes. Now looks wise, I actually prefer the look of the RS9 seat. Now the silver and black happened to coincidentally match my Prime cockpit now, which isn't available in silver. Mine's silver because it was a prototype. The one you guys could buy would be black, but that would still work. And I also really like the red stitching on the bolsters here and up and around the top. I don't know if you'll see that in the video. But when I reviewed the Prime cockpit, I did sort of a walk around and review of the seat as well. So if you're interested in a close-up on the RS9 seat, have a look at my Prime cockpit review. And the same for the RS6 seat. Have a look at my Art cockpit review if you're interested in a close-up of that as well. But yeah, so sort of appearance-wise, I prefer the look of the RS9 seat. And I'll get out of this one in a second so you can see them both side. But in fact, I'll get out of them now. And I'll wander around the back here so you can just see the pair of them. Is my head in? Just about. You can see the pair of them side by side and what they look like. This one's sitting, the RS9's sitting a touch higher because it's on my motion platform. And also, if anyone's interested, what the RS6 is attached to here is the back half of a GT Omega Art cockpit. You can undo 2 thumb screws and it actually allows you to then wheel the back half of the cockpit. Mine's rattling because I haven't got the bolts done up. This seat's coming off after this video and is going to a new owner. But yeah, you can literally wheel the back half of your Art cockpit around. So you can 2 thumb screws literally separates the front and back, which I used to do that at my old house when I wasn't racing, and I would actually use this seat to slide under a desk in the front room so you could sit at it and play. It was like a retro desk. I had my Mega Drive set up there, my Saturn set up there, and my ZX Spectrum. And I could sit in this chair in front of an old CRT, which is now over there, and play all my retro games. And then when I wanted to sim race, I'd grab the seat and I'd slide it back around, slot it into the front of the GT Omega Art cockpit, do the 2 thumb screws up, and bosh, I had my racing rig together. Anyway, waffling on about irrelevant stuff, as always. These are what they look like side by side. As I say, build quality is the same, finish is the same. I like the look of this one. Looks is personal preference. So let's, and comfort-wise for me, they're both just as comfortable as one another. So let's have a measure up of the actual dimensions. So that the height of this, the width of this, the width of this, and the length of that, and then we'll compare it to this one. I don't know how, maybe if I kneel around here. So let's go from sort of the back stitching line to the very front. That is exactly 50 centimetres front to back. I suppose we may as well then compare it to this one then. We'll do each dimension at the same time. That is 46 centimetres. So the RS9 is 4 centimetres shorter in the base and the bottom part of the seat. Now let's have a measure up between the bolsters. We are looking at 36 centimetres between the bolsters on the RS9. And on here we are at the very bottom, which is where I measured on there, we're actually 34 centimetres. So this base is a bit longer and a bit narrower than what the RS9 is. So now let's have a look. Where should we? The height looks. Let's measure. Yeah, let's measure the whole thing. So from the seat base where you would sit, we're looking at 88 centimetres. And again, from the seat base where you would sit, we're looking at 80 centimetres. So the RS9 is a little bit shorter than what the RS6 is. Now let's have a measure up between the bolsters. So this is where people might say, you're going to get... I don't want to put myself in the way. There's oh, that's all right, you don't need to see me anyway, do you? Let's measure this up in here. So width between the bolsters, 28 centimetres. Now on here, we don't have, see these very much come to a hard stop here and here, or they're almost 90 degrees, whereas these are a much gentler taper. So I'm not quite sure where you'd like me to measure from here, because this would definitely give like a pinch point, I suppose, if you're a big guy. Whereas this one wouldn't, because these are way shallower. I suppose I'll measure to just the insides of the high points then. So we're looking at about 40 centimetres to these sort of inner high points here, because ultimately, as humans, we don't have like an ironing board flat back. We do all curve a little, you know, in the back as our bodies come round. And in actual fact, I'd probably say, if you're a bigger guy, you're going to want to go with the RS9 because of that gentle curve. Whereas if you're any wider than whatever it was I just measured, I've forgotten already, if you're any wider than 28 centimetres, these bolsters are going to really squeeze you. That's probably the defining factor between the two. So RS6, longer and thinner in the seat base, also taller and thinner in the seat upright, and RS9, shorter and a bit wider, and also shorter in the upright length. But because of this gentle curve, I'm going to say this is the better one for bigger guys. That's interesting because, oh, let me hop in this one in fact, because you haven't seen me sit in it yet. Yeah, that's interesting. I'd also say this is slightly more padded in the bottom than what that one is. Although this is my 3-year-old one, so maybe it's lost a little bit of its softness. Not by a lot, but this just feels a bit more squishy. Yeah, so this is what I look like saying this one. But I would say if you're a bigger guy, because look, I've got clearance here where these bolsters are. I can almost get a fist in. Why is it I always find myself saying stupid shit on these videos? I can almost get a fist in. That's either good or bad. Either side of myself here. Whereas if I hop over into this one, we'll see whether we can get a fist in here. No, we can't get anything. In fact, if I was any wider than what I am, this seat would be too small for me, because that's actually literally as wide as what I am at the waist there. So that's actually quite a useful video, because I wouldn't have, when I was choosing a seat back 3 or so years ago, I actually wanted this one, the RS9, but they didn't have it in stock. And I ended up getting the RS6 because I was impatient. Thankfully, I'm not any bigger than I am width-wise, or that would have been a mistake. So, yeah, it has been quite useful. So, yeah, I think bigger guys definitely go for the RS9. If you look at me and you think, yeah, I'm definitely a bit wider than what Carl is, you want the RS9. If you're and this is the other weird thing, because if you're a smaller guy, maybe you're narrower and perhaps shorter than me. I'm pretty much 6 foot, 5'11", 6 foot. This has a longer base. So you might actually find that, I don't know, there's quite a bit of gap between my knees and where the seat finishes. But what I was about to say was you might find that you're left with your legs dangling over the edge of the seat because you're a bit short. You're a bit short, the seat's a bit longer, and this might be your preference because it's got that slightly shorter base, if you know what I mean. Again, that'll depend on your driving style. If you're driving F1 position, your legs are pretty much straight out anyway, and if you drive in more of a GT position with the seat higher, then you know that extra length with this seat might be an issue if you're a particularly short fellow. So it may even be really that the RS9 is perhaps the best all-rounder because if you're a bit shorter, you've got a shorter seat base. If you're a bit of a wider guy, you've got more space for a double fisting either side on the RS9 seat. Whereas this one, you know, whilst in real life, in a race car, you want to be really snug because you're being thrown around. You know, for us sim racers, especially if it's a static rig without motion, having bolsters hug you in place is important. So, yeah, it might be that this RS9 is actually the better all-round seat. I think that's probably everything covered as far as these seats go. They both recline, they both slide backwards and forwards, obviously, as you would expect. That's probably everything there is to talk about. Any questions, anything I've missed, as always, stick them in the comments. As always, there's a discounted link to GT Amiga's website for anything from mouse mats, if they sell mouse mats, I don't know. They definitely sell rucksacks, to full racing rigs. Click through the discounts applied at checkout. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for watching and take it easy.